Imagine discovering that the people who raised you could be seen as nothing more than objects. That a secret network trained teenagers to manipulate, deceive, and betray their own families for money, for survival, and for a twisted sense of power. In this video, you'll hear confessions so shocking, so morally twisted, you'll question everything you thought you knew about innocence. Teens who watched their parents without guilt, who learned to control and exploit them, and who found themselves addicted to the game of betrayal. By the end of this story, you'll see just how far desperation can push someone, and how easily love can be twisted into cruelty. Stay with us, because the darkest secrets are just about to be revealed. The town of Grayford had always carried a certain weight, as if the gray skies and crumbling brick buildings were memories of past struggles. It was the kind of place where opportunity seemed to arrive only in rumors and the occasional social worker's promise. Most children grew up fast here, learning that the world did not wait for them to catch up. Among them was 17-year-old Eli Harper, who had lived his entire life in a 3-room apartment above a shuttered bakery. His mother, Clara, worked 2 jobs as a cleaner and a night nurse, rarely home before midnight. His father had vanished years ago, leaving behind a note that read only, "Find your way without me." Eli had long stopped hoping for answers. Eli's best friend, Maya, lived 2 blocks away in a house that was barely standing. Her father, a former mechanic, had turned to alcohol after losing his job, leaving her mother, Anya, to raise her and her younger brother alone. Maya and Eli shared a quiet understanding of survival, an unspoken pact to navigate the world together. It was during one of their aimless afternoons, wandering the abandoned streets near the old Grayford Mill, that they first encountered The Collective, a seemingly innocuous online platform advertised on cheap smartphones sold in corner stores. The app promised opportunities to help your family and earn rewards. Its creators were never visible, profiles filled with stock photos and empty biographies, but it radiated authority. "Look at this," Maya whispered, scrolling through the app. "They say you can make money by helping your parents in ways that the system can't." Eli frowned, instinctively wary. "Helping them how?" Maya shrugged, eyes wide. "It's vague. They call it resource management. Sounds weird, but everyone at school is talking about it. People are making serious cash." The first assignment was simple: a survey about household finances and health. They submitted it hesitantly, giggling nervously at the thought of being part of something so clandestine. A week later, a small payment appeared in their linked accounts, $20 each, enough to buy food for a week. It did not seem dangerous at first, but then the app escalated. Assignments became more specific, morally ambiguous. One asked Eli to take photographs of his mother's medication stock. Another asked Maya to track her father's movements and report his daily habits. Rewards increased, and so did the thrill, a dangerous combination. "What if someone finds out?" Eli asked one evening as they sat under the flickering streetlight, counting their earnings. "They won't," Maya said. Her voice carried a mix of excitement and fear. "We're careful. And look, it helps at home, doesn't it?" Eli stared at the small bills, the prospect of easing his mother's burden tempting him beyond caution. But a gnawing doubt lingered, like a shadow in his chest. Soon, other students joined. Rumors spread that some kids were earning hundreds, not just by observing, but by influencing their parents in subtle ways, convincing them to sell old appliances, cancel certain services, even sign documents they barely understood. Grayford's children were being trained in manipulation without realizing it. At first, Eli and Maya convinced themselves they were just helping. It was survival. But each task blurred moral lines. One night, Eli found himself staring at his mother as she slept, a notification glowing on his phone. Step 3. Prepare household assets for appraisal. Reward, $500. His hand hovered over the screen. Every instinct screamed no. But the thought of paying for overdue rent, of giving Clara a day off from cleaning, whispered yes. And that was when they saw it, the first real glimpse behind the collective. A forum hidden deep within the app, where older teens shared methods for convincing parents to donate assets without resistance. The language was clinical, detached, almost predatory. Terms like liquidation, resource optimization, and parental asset transfer floated across the screen. Eli felt a cold chill run down his spine. "Are we doing the wrong thing?" he asked Maya, a voice barely audible. Maya did not answer immediately. She scrolled quickly and then shut the app. "We're smart. We just follow instructions. That's all." But Eli knew it was no longer innocent. And yet, the money kept coming. Small amounts turned into hundreds, and hundreds into thousands. Grayford's streets, the bleak alleys and broken homes, became a backdrop to a quiet moral descent. Children, once innocent and playful, were now agents in a game they barely understood. One evening, Clara called Eli into the kitchen. Her face was tired, eyes shadowed. "Eli, have you been handling things behind my back?" Eli froze. He could not tell her the truth. The words themselves seemed dangerous. Instead, he offered a half-truth about extra chores and a new job at the corner store. Clara smiled faintly, too exhausted to question further. But that night, Eli could not sleep. He thought about the photos he'd taken of her medications, the way Maya had suggested minor alterations to her father's bills, and the creeping sense of guilt that weighed heavier than any amount of money. The collective was no longer just a game or a source of income. It was a shadow over their lives, teaching them to measure value not in love or family, but in utility and profit. And Eli knew, deep down, that once they were fully enmeshed, there would be no turning back. The following weeks in Grayford seemed to blur together. The gray drizzle became permanent, staining streets, sidewalks, and moods alike. Eli and Maya had fallen into a rhythm with the collective, submitting data, following instructions, earning rewards, but now each task carried a growing weight. The money kept piling up, but so did the guilt. It started small, tracking Clara's spending patterns, noting when Anya left the house, checking bills and receipts. Then came more delicate operations. One evening, Eli received an encrypted message in the app. Phase 2 begins. Identify high-value assets. Use influence. Do not hesitate. Reward increases. He stared at the screen, fingers trembling. Influence? What did that even mean? Maya, beside him, read over his shoulder and nodded. Her eyes shone with the same mix of fear and excitement that Eli felt. "What now?" he asked. Maya shrugged. "We figure it out."
They would not give us the task if it was not doable.
That night, Eli watched Clara as she sorted laundry. The instructions on his phone were precise. Convince parent to consolidate valuable items. Approach subtly. Document compliance. He did not know if he could. But then he remembered the overdue rent, the electric bill that threatened to shut off their power. The thought of helping her, even in this dark, manipulative way, made him press forward. Meanwhile, Maya faced her own dilemma. Her father had started losing jobs more frequently, and Anya's health was fragile. The collective's instructions now required her to suggest household efficiency measures, a polite euphemism for selling or trading possessions of real value. She hesitated, watching her mother's smile fade slightly each time a suggestion was made. As the days passed, Grayford's children began noticing one another, forming a loose network of silent competitors. Rumors spread of kids leveling up in the collective, their parents unknowingly providing increasing value. The thrill of competition mingled with fear. Each child wanted to succeed, yet none could fully articulate the moral cost. One rainy afternoon, Eli and Maya met under the half-collapsed awning of the old mill. Eli pulled out his phone. "They've moved us into something else," he said, voice low. "It's called Phase 3. We're not just tracking or documenting anymore. They want active persuasion."
Maya's face paled.
"You mean, like, convincing our parents?" Eli nodded. "Exactly. And they've increased the reward. $500 each. More if we succeed fully." They sat in silence, the drizzle soaking their jackets. Both knew this was no longer about helping families. They were being trained to manipulate the people they loved, step by step, under the guise of survival. That night, Eli approached Clara carefully, asking about reorganizing her bills. His heart pounded. Clara, tired from her double shifts, agreed with a distracted smile. Nothing illegal had happened yet, but Eli felt the gnawing sense of crossing a line. Maya, meanwhile, suggested minor changes to Anya's spending. Each suggestion was small, almost harmless, but together, they formed a pattern of subtle coercion. Soon, the collective introduced an escalation system. The app's notifications became urgent, almost commanding. Some children whispered of penalties for failure, losing access to rewards, exposure, or worse, vague threats they dared not articulate. Eli realized that the platform was not just teaching manipulation, it was creating dependency, psychological addiction. One evening, a new face appeared in the network. A girl named Lena, older, sharper, and unnervingly confident. She had already achieved high rewards and seemed to revel in sharing tactics. When Eli and Maya tentatively approached her for advice, she leaned back, smirking. "You two are slow," she said bluntly. "It's all about control. Observe, influence, repeat. The parents, they're assets, not people. Treat them like numbers. That's how you level up." Maya recoiled slightly. "They're people." Lena's smile did not waver. "Not in this game. The faster you accept it, the easier it gets. And the rewards, trust me, they're worth it." Her words struck a chord deep in Eli's chest. Lena had already crossed the threshold he feared. And now, by association, he and Maya were being dragged closer. Tensions in their households grew. Clara noticed Eli spending more time on his phone, often withdrawing into his room with a worried expression. Anya complained of being tired, frustrated with subtle nudges and efficiency suggestions. The children began to feel the weight of deception, their achievements tinged with guilt. One particularly stormy night, Eli's phone buzzed with a high-priority alert. Final phase, maximum asset transfer, parent compliance required, bonus reward, $2,000. He stared at the screen, numb. The words seemed surreal, almost monstrous. $2,000 could solve months of problems, but at what cost? He looked at Clara sleeping across the room, the soft lines of exhaustion on her face, and felt a pang of shame. Could he betray her in this way, even indirectly? Maya faced the same dilemma.
Anya's fragile health had worsened slightly, and the instructions required persuasion that felt cruel. Yet the money promised a respite from the relentless pressure of their environment, a temporary escape from a cycle of poverty and struggle. The moral line blurred further when the children began to share strategies in hushed tones at school, comparing success rates and influence techniques. What had started as a secret experiment now resembled a dark classroom of psychological manipulation. Competition, greed, and desperation intertwined, leaving little room for innocence. Eli realized he was no longer just participating. He was becoming part of the system itself. The collective had trained him, shaped him, and now he was an agent in a network that treated human lives as commodities. And once the money entered their hands, there was no turning back. As Grayford's drizzle turned to sleet, Eli and Maya sat in the shadows of the abandoned mill, phones in hand, contemplating the final move. They were on the brink, ready to cross the threshold from innocent survival to full moral compromise. And deep down, both knew the moment they acted, they would forever see their parents not just as family, but as means to an end. Grayford had never felt colder. The sleet stung faces, streets shimmered with icy puddles, and the wind whispered through broken windows like voices from some forgotten past. Eli and Maya trudged to their usual meeting spot at the abandoned mill, phones clutched tightly, hearts heavy. The collective's final phase awaited them, and the line between survival and betrayal had never been thinner. "You sure about this?" Maya asked, voice low and teeth chattering from the cold. Eli shook his head slowly. "No, but we've already come this far." Phase 4, the ultimate level of the collective, was no longer a matter of mere influence. It required strategic action, ensuring that parents complied fully with suggestions, documenting every step, and preparing assets for transfer. The reward was promised to be life-changing, enough to pay off rent, cover medical bills, and even move out of Grayford. And yet the price was invisible but palpable. Trust, innocence, family bonds. Maya pulled out her phone. Notifications flooded the screen. Reminders, instructions, and ominous warnings. Failure is unacceptable. The network observes all participants. Compliance ensures survival. Survival? Eli muttered bitterly. Or addiction. They've got us hooked. Maya's jaw tightened. We do not have a choice. Not really. At least, not if we want to help at home. They split tasks. Eli focused on Clara, Maya on Anya. But as the night unfolded, the first cracks appeared. Clara noticed the sudden reorganization of bills, the subtle nudges Eli had implanted. Her voice, usually soft and forgiving, carried suspicion. "Eli, what's going on?" she asked.
"Did you change things without telling me?" Eli's throat tightened. He could not tell her the truth. Words felt dangerous. "Just trying to help with budgeting," he muttered. "I thought you'd want a hand." Clara frowned but said nothing, retreating to her bedroom. Eli sank onto the couch, guilt pressing down like a heavy weight. He realized that the first true consequence of the collective's manipulation was already here. Distrust. Maya faced a similar tension. Anya, frail and cautious, noticed missing receipts, canceled services, and suggestions she had not made herself. Her voice trembled. "Maya, why are you changing things?" Maya froze. "I thought I was helping. I'm just trying to make things easier." But her words sounded hollow even to her ears. She could see the subtle hurt in her mother's eyes, a quiet betrayal that no amount of money could erase. The next day at school, the network's competitive element surged. Lena, the older girl, approached Eli and Maya with a cold smile. "You're slowing down," she said. "Phase 4 is not about hesitation. It's about efficiency. Parents are assets. People are distractions. The faster you complete tasks, the bigger the reward." Eli's stomach churned. He wanted to reject her advice, to walk away, but a part of him was addicted to the adrenaline, the sense of control, the money that could fix months of struggle.
Then the first real warning came.
A participant had been flagged for non-compliance. The message was cryptic but chilling. "Failure observed. Access temporarily revoked. Consider consequences carefully." Fear rippled through the children. They were no longer just participants. They were pawns under surveillance, their moral hesitation tracked and punished. At home, the strain intensified. Clara began questioning Eli's motives more frequently, her tone sharp with worry. Anya's health deteriorated slightly under stress. Both parents unknowingly became victims of a system that trained children to manipulate, deceive, and prioritize profit over affection. One evening, Eli and Maya met secretly in the mill. Both were silent for a long time, the weight of their actions pressing down. Finally, Eli spoke. "We're in too deep. I can't keep doing this. Seeing them like this, I feel like I'm killing them slowly." Maya's eyes were hard, but a shadow of fear crossed her face. "We can't stop now, not after Phase 4. If we do, the network, Lena, they'll come after us. And what about home? Everything we've done has helped, hasn't it?" Eli shook his head. "Helped or corrupted? We've lost something already. Trust, love. We're gambling with them." The moral tension reached its peak when the collective instructed the children to stage asset consolidation events, meetings with their parents where the suggestions had to appear as voluntary. Eli watched Clara sign forms she barely understood, while Maya observed Anya reluctantly agreeing to sell old appliances. The money transferred into their accounts immediately, yet the sense of triumph was hollow. It was Lena who revealed the network's darker truth. She cornered Eli after the last assignment, smirking. "You know, the network does not care about your survival. None of it. You're just a training module. They observe, reward, and escalate. Once you're fully compliant, you graduate or vanish. Either way, you're a product now." Eli felt cold dread. The reality was undeniable. They had been manipulated from the start, groomed to view parents as resources rather than people. And now, withdrawal from the system was not safe. As the weeks passed, the psychological toll became impossible to ignore. Sleep was punctuated by guilt dreams, panic attacks, and paranoia. The children started noticing subtle signs of observation. Someone always watching from the streets, shadows that seemed too purposeful, hints that the network's reach extended beyond the app. The climax came when Clara confronted Eli directly. She had discovered discrepancies in the bills and receipts and traced them back to him. Her voice shook, a mixture of anger, fear, and heartbreak. "Eli, what have you done?" Eli could not lie anymore. He confessed everything: the app, the tasks, the money, the manipulation. Clara's reaction was a mixture of fury and despair, her trust shattered. And yet, amid the devastation, she whispered something that broke through his shame. "You're still my son." But you need to step away from this, whatever it is.
Maya faced a similar reckoning with Anya. The moment of truth was painful but necessary. Both children had to confront the consequences of their actions. The collective had promised rewards, but it had also taken innocence, trust, and peace of mind. By the end of Part 3, the children realized that survival, money, and competition had come at a cost far greater than they imagined. The network's dark system could manipulate, reward, and escalate indefinitely. But human conscience, guilt, and the desire to protect loved ones had limits. The stage was set for Part 4. The aftermath, consequences, and a reckoning with both the network and their own moral compromises. Eli and Maya would have to navigate exposing the collective, repairing family bonds, and confronting the lingering psychological scars of their descent into manipulation. The first snow of the season fell over Grayford, coating streets and rooftops in a fragile, deceptive white.
For Eli and Maya, it felt less like winter and more like a frozen pause between what had been and what must come next. The collective's shadow still lingered, but now the consequences of their actions pressed heavier than ever. After the confessions to their parents, life in both households changed dramatically. Clara's trust in Eli had been fractured, but she had not given up on him. Nights were quieter, conversations slower and measured, each word chosen to bridge the gap between guilt and understanding. Anya mirrored the same cautious approach with Maya, her smile still warm but guarded. Both mothers were determined to repair the bonds strained by manipulation, but Eli and Maya knew the process would be slow and painful. School had become another battlefield. Rumors about the collective swirled among students, some whispering of rewards, others of disappearances, others still warning of consequences for those who participated. Lena continued her cold, distant presence in the hallways, a reminder that the network extended beyond the phones in Eli and Maya's hands. But the children had changed. They no longer measured success in money earned or levels achieved. They measured it in silence, in hesitation before touching the phones, in the aching awareness of the choices they had made. They had learned, too late, that the system had not just been a game, it had been a mirror reflecting the worst capacities of desperation, greed, and moral compromise. One evening, Eli and Maya met in the mill one last time. It was quieter than before, the storm outside replaced by still, biting wind. Eli held his phone in his hands, staring at the dark screen. "We can't just leave it there," he said finally. "If Lena's right, if it's a network, someone else will fall into the same trap. We have to expose it." Maya nodded slowly. "But how? They're anonymous. They watch everything. And what about them?" She gestured vaguely, thinking of their parents. "We can't risk another mistake." They began collecting evidence cautiously, screenshots, code snippets, and encrypted messages that could reveal the collective's structure. Each step was careful, deliberate, a sharp contrast to the reckless obedience of the past months. They knew exposure was dangerous, but the moral imperative outweighed fear. At home, they shared what they could with Clara and Anya, keeping the families informed without revealing every technical detail. The mothers, still processing the betrayal, helped in subtle ways, watching for any unusual behavior, encouraging the children's initiative, and providing emotional grounding. Slowly, trust began to rebuild, like fragile ice forming over a turbulent river. Then came the network's response. A notification appeared one evening. "Suspicious activity detected. Cease immediately. Rewards forfeited. Compliance required."
Eli felt his chest tighten. The system was aware, its reach extending beyond imagination. Lena, upon discovering their plan, confronted them online, her words sharp. "You think you can stop it? You've already graduated. You're part of the system whether you like it or not. Exposure is irrelevant. Rules do not apply to you now. Obedience defines the network." Maya's fingers trembled over the keyboard. "We're not part of it anymore. We're stopping it." It became a silent battle of wits, strategy, and courage. Using the knowledge they had gained while under the network's training, Eli and Maya exploited loopholes, tracing connections, and gradually building a case they could share with authorities. They discovered that the network was not just a local phenomenon. It spanned multiple cities, exploiting children with promises of rewards, tracking compliance, and escalating morally destructive tasks. Eventually, they approached a journalist who specialized in digital crime and child exploitation. Their documentation, careful and detailed, allowed the reporter to understand the network's scope without endangering the children further. Grayford's story would go public, revealing the system for what it was: a manipulative, predatory network that had treated children and their families as resources.
The aftermath was messy, but necessary. Investigations began, and while the collective was far from fully dismantled, Grayford's authorities now had a blueprint for intervention. Lena vanished from the local scene, leaving Eli and Maya unsure if she had moved on or simply retreated into the network's shadows elsewhere. For the families, life slowly returned to a fragile normal. Money was no longer a constant temptation. The children learned to value trust, communication, and honesty over immediate rewards. Clara and Eli started weekly family talks, sharing thoughts, fears, and plans. Anya and Maya developed similar routines, small rituals that mended bonds strained by manipulation. Yet the psychological scars remained. Eli and Maya both carried the weight of knowing what they had done, the knowledge that innocence could be stolen in subtle, almost invisible ways. Therapy helped, but there was no erasing the lessons learned, the dark understanding of how desperation could be exploited, how love could be quantified, and how easily moral lines could blur under pressure. In the final scenes, Grayford's children are no longer pawns. They are survivors. Eli and Maya, sitting side by side in the mill where so much of their moral education occurred, reflect on what they've endured. "We can't forget," Eli says quietly, looking at the peeling walls and scattered debris. "But maybe we can teach others."
About the signs. About what not to do. Maya nods.
And about protecting people, not using them. That's the real lesson. Outside, the snow continues to fall, blanketing the town in white. It's cold, stark, and unrelenting, much like the world they've glimpsed. But inside, there's warmth, fragile and growing. A family, a friendship, a sense that morality, though tested, can survive even the darkest systems. The collective may still exist in shadows, preying elsewhere, but Grayford's children have survived. They've faced temptation, manipulation, and moral compromise, and emerged with a clearer understanding of who they are and what they value. And for Eli and Maya, that knowledge, though heavy, is a kind of freedom. Freedom from the network, from exploitation, and from the silence that once allowed darkness to thrive.